In this Diablo 4 build video, I'll be showing you my Ice Barrage Sorcerer build. This is a Beginner Sorcerer build that's aimed at World Tiers 1 and 2 that focuses on using the Ice Shards ability. The general strategy for this build is to make use of Frost skills to control the battlefield. You'll usually start off by rallying enemies to you and then activating Frost Nova or Blizzard. What's great about Frost Nova is that although it has a long cooldown, you're able to deal massive damage, instantly making weaker foes explode, but also applying the vulnerable effect to those who survive. This can be followed through with Ice Shards to finish them off, or Blizzard to continually chill and eventually freeze them. One great thing about this particular Sorcerer build is that you rarely run out of mana even if you use Ice Shards and Blizzard, both of which consume this resource. This is due to the aspect of the Umbral and aspect of efficiency, thereby allowing you to regenerate mana at a faster pace. For more challenging enemies, you'll often trigger Ice Armor to conjure a barrier and to be able to restore more mana. You'll activate Frost Nova to make them vulnerable, and then Blizzard over and over again until they're frozen. Once successful, you can simply melt them away in a matter of seconds with Ice Shards. Moving into the skills, let's talk about Frost Nova first. Frost Nova is an extremely potent defensive skill for this build, and it lets you instantly freeze mobs and elites, but not bosses. Even though you can't spam it due to its relatively long cooldown, you'll have enough time to destroy enemies with Ice Shards or Frost Bolt. As such, you'll want to invest all 5 points into Frost Nova. Thanks to the enhanced Frost Nova upgrade, you'll be able to reduce this skill's cooldown from 18 to 14 seconds upon slaughtering weaker enemies, which will often be the case. The other modifier you want to take here is Mystical Frost Nova. It might be tempting to choose Shimmering Frost Nova to gain more mana, especially at earlier levels if you don't have the right aspects yet. However, Mystical Frost Nova instantly makes enemies vulnerable. This means that they take at least 20% increased damage. What's more is that the vulnerability duration for bosses is longer at 6 seconds, so you'll definitely whittle down their HP faster. Next, we'll take a look at Ice Shards. Ice Shards is the bread and butter core skill of this build. It lets you launch several rapidly moving icicles against a target from any distance. Ice Shards is made all the more effective against frozen enemies, allowing you to deal increased damage, so it synergizes very well with Frost Nova and Blizzard. As such, remember to max out this skill. Enhanced Ice Shards guarantees that the shards will always bounce off other frozen targets to continuously deal damage against them. Next, you're going to be going for Greater Ice Shards, which lets you treat any enemy as frozen to constantly inflict increased damage. The only condition here is you'll need to have an active barrier. This can be conjured with Ice Armor or by attacking elites and bosses if you have the Aspect of the Protector. Aspect of the Protector can be obtained by finishing the Lost Archives dungeon in Fractured Peaks. To enhance the power of Ice Shards, you'll want to use it in your enchantment slot. What this does is that upon cast, the shards will home in on frozen enemies to kill them much faster. To gain access to this enchantment slot, you'll need to complete the Legacy of the Magi quest, which becomes available at level 15. Next, we'll take a look at Blizzard. Blizzard is another powerful mastery and control skill that not only deals huge cold damage, but also chills enemies over time. This will help you kite them in conjuration with Ice Shards. What makes it shine are the Enhanced Blizzard and Wizard's Blizzard upgrades. Enhanced Blizzard works like Ice Shards in the sense that you deal more damage against frozen targets, which you'll eventually inflict with repeated use of this skill or in combination with Frost Bolt and Frost Nova. Once you gain more points, you should invest in Wizard's Blizzard to lower the mana cost of Ice Shards when Blizzard is active. This is a huge thing since spamming Ice Shards is what you're aiming to do to destroy impaired enemies quickly. Up next is Teleport. To be able to effectively traverse areas in the blink of the eye, you're going to want to invest in this skill. Doing so will let you deal a bit of damage and grants you Unstoppable, which instantly strips you of crowd control effects you may have had before casting this skill, and also makes you immune to them. Teleport provides you with mobility you need to get away from dangerous situations. In terms of upgrades, you should prioritize unlocking Enhanced Teleport to reduce its cooldown based on the number of enemies you hit. At higher levels, you can choose to invest in Shimmering Teleport to boost your damage reduction, but it's not mandatory, especially if you already have Aspect of the Protector. And finally, we have Frost Bolt. Frost Bolt is a key basic skill for this build that deals some damage while chilling enemies to slow them down. With the Enhanced Frost Bolt upgrade, there's a small chance for the bolt to explode on the affected target, and a guarantee to explode on frozen ones to deal additional damage. But more than this, you'll be aiming to get the Glinting Frostbolt upgrade. As a result, you'll be able to generate extra mana when attacking chilled and frozen enemies, which will allow you to cast more Ice Shards. During boss fights, you can open with Blizzard or Frost Nova, but your priority will be to trigger Ice Armor if your legendary Aspect of the Protector is down in order to keep your barrier up. On top of mitigating more damage with this barrier, you'll continue to amplify the damage of Ice Shards upon activation since bosses will be treated as frozen. Remember to use Frost Bolt from time to time to replenish your mana. You'll of course want to make sure that you use Frost Nova as soon as it's off cooldown regularly because this set's vulnerable on bosses, and you want to make sure this is up as much as you can. You should then activate Blizzard with Ice Shards over and over again, trying to inflict as much damage on the boss as possible. Ice Armor is absolutely phenomenal in this build, and it allows you to conjure a barrier to absorb damage, and any damage dealt to yourself will be carried over to the barrier's strength. This means you'll be able to hold your ground better, making you survive in combat longer, and you'll eventually upgrade this with the Enhanced Ice Armor upgrade to boost your mana generation. Glass Cannon is also a great passive to max out early on, as it lets you deal greater damage, even if you take more damage yourself. However, it can be mitigated with Ice Armor and Aspect of the Protector, and avoiding damage using Teleport, so it's a really good pickup for this build. Final tips. You should be on the lookout for gear that gives bonuses to intelligence to boost skill damage, willpower for improved mana regeneration, core skill damage, frost skill damage, cold damage, damage to chilled enemies, damage to frozen enemies, damage to crowd control enemies, mana cost reduction, and rank to all defensive skills. Damage reduction from close and distant enemies are also good to have to improve your survivability. Remember though that optimizing your gear between levels 1 to 50 is extremely hard to do, as you are constantly getting new gear to replace existing gear with that's higher level all the time. However, you should be on the lookout for these things and try and implement them where you can, as long as you don't lose damage doing so. Passives you want to invest in as you gather more skill points are Icy Veil, Cold Front, Permafrost, Hoarfrost, Icy Touch, and Elemental Attunement. Icy Veil and Cold Front make it so that your barrier remains active for a longer period and you're able to apply chill more effectively. Meanwhile, Permafrost, Hoarfrost, and Icy Touch focus on significantly amplifying your cold damage against elites, as well as crowd-controlled and vulnerable targets. And finally, there's Elemental Attunement, which grants a chance to cast defensive skills more frequently upon landing crits. Aspects that you want to keep an eye out for as you make your way to level 50 are the Everling aspect and Runeworker's Conduit aspects. The Everling aspect reduces the damage you take from impaired and vulnerable targets, so even with Glass Cannon, you can continue to remain fine. Whereas the Runeworker's Conduit aspect improves your movement speed after triggering Teleport for enhanced mobility. Other good legendary aspects to go for are Aspect of Piercing Cold, Aspect of Biting Cold, and Aspect of Control. The Aspect of Piercing Cold lets your Ice Shards pierce numerous times to affect more enemies, while the Aspect of Biting Cold grants a notable chance to make frozen enemies vulnerable. So this lets you apply Vulnerable using the other Frost skills besides Frost Nova. You can acquire the Aspect of Piercing Cold from Deadman's Dredge Dungeon in Fractured Peaks, and Aspect of Biting Cold in the Dry Steppes. And lastly, the Aspect of Control, which you should consider slotting on a two-handed weapon for best results, allows you to deal greater damage to frozen enemies. This is obtained from finishing the Sunken Librarian Dungeon in Kyrgyzstan. So that wraps up our Ice Barrage Sorcerer build. I hope you guys found this useful. If you have further questions about the build, be sure to leave them in the comments below and I will get back to them. And you guys can expect more Sorcerer and Sorceress builds from us, as well as other builds, including level 50 builds and beyond. Also, don't forget to bookmark the Diablo 4 wiki and our interactive map, as you'll need to refer to these from time to time for certain aspects of your build.